All right, pre-algebra. We're talking about solving absolute value equations. And let's remind ourselves what absolute value is. Absolute value is a number's distance from zero. So, for example, if I had the number 10 and I wanted you to tell me its absolute value, what's the absolute value of 10? If you put it on a number line, how far is it from zero? Well, it's 10 spots away. So the absolute value of 10 is 10. What about if I said, what's the absolute value of negative 10? If I put negative 10 on a number line, it's still 10 spots away from 0. So the absolute value of negative 10 is also 10. Because think about it, the distance cannot be negative. An absolute value is a number's distance from 0. So absolute value is always the positive of a number. The absolute value of 50 is 50. The absolute value of negative 17 is 17. Absolute value is always going to be positive. So if I look at this equation, and remember those lines are the absolute value symbol if you've forgotten. This says the absolute value of x equals 11. So what number could be x? What could we plug in for x and take the absolute value and get 11? Well, we could do 11, right? The absolute value of 11 equals 11. But we also could do negative 11. The absolute value of negative 11 is 11. So this is this equation actually has two answers. The answer is x equals 11 or x equals negative 11. We actually get two answers for this equation. So let's look at the next one. The absolute value of x equals negative 11. So what number could I plug in for x, take the absolute value, and get negative 11? Well, if you think about what we just talked about, though, I said absolute value always has to be positive, right? When you take the absolute value of something, you're going to get a positive number. So how could I take the absolute value of some number x and get negative 11? You can't. So this is no solution. It is not possible for absolute value to equal a negative number. So if you ever have absolute value of something equals a negative number, the answer is going to be no solution because it's not possible. So let's look at our next one here. X plus 8, the absolute value of x plus 8 equals 13. So some number plus 8, we add them together, we take the absolute value, we should get 13. So you probably can look at this and know what one of the answers is, but there's two answers here. And what you do is, when you solve an absolute value equation, when you get to the point where you have absolute value of whatever, it doesn't even matter what's inside, the absolute value of something equals a number. When you get to that point, you actually split it and solve two different equations. Your first equation is x plus 8 equals 13, and then I'll write or. And my second equation, again, I take what's inside the absolute value, but I make it equal negative 13. I'm going over my line there. So then I just solve both of these equations. So I subtract 8. 13 minus 8 is 5, so I get x equals 5. Over here I subtract 8. And negative 13 minus 8 is negative 21. So I get x equals negative 21. And that's my answer. I've got x equals 5 or x equals negative 21. And if I were to check them, 5 plus 8 is 13. The absolute value of 13, 13. Good, we're right. Negative 21. Negative 21 plus 8 is negative 13. And the absolute value of negative 13, also positive 13. So this one works as well. So we actually get two answers here. Our answer is x equals 5 or x equals negative 21. So let's look at our last one here. Absolute value of x plus 8 equals negative 13. So what we're doing here is some number plus 8. We take the absolute value and it equals negative 13. But remember on the second one, we talked about absolute value cannot equal a negative number. So even though this is an x plus 8 inside, no matter what, when we do that x plus 8, and no matter what x is, we take the absolute value, it's going to be positive. So this is not possible. Absolute value cannot equal a negative number. So this is no solution as well. All right, so that's the first set of problems. I got 4 more coming. Check those as well.